Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a great day. Let's talk about low rent people and the death of Las Vegas. I had a whole spiel about this live, but technical difficulties happened and I wasn't able to give my whole spiel because the stream kept dying. We're basically dealing with magic. We got to remember that. And sometimes the spell fizzles and things don't work perfectly. So here's a VOD talking about low rent people and the death of Las Vegas. Low rent people. I'm not sure where I got this term. I might have gotten it from my mom. It might be something like my mom and my extended family use. They're low rent. They're low rent people. It's a good term because it doesn't get stuck to any specific kind of ethnic group or anything like that. It's a type of person and a behavior pattern for a type of people. And low rent people, I think, have had an impact on Las Vegas and our society as a whole. I'll talk about Costco with that a little bit. Let me give you some background about Las Vegas. I used to live in Las Vegas. I lived in Las Vegas for a little over 2 years where I was a performer and I was a teacher. I didn't make a ton of money there, but it was okay because Las Vegas was really, really cheap. And I had some really hard months where I made like almost no money, but I was still able to live there because it was really, really cheap to live there. The rents were really low. The groceries were cheap. And honestly, you could entertain yourself for very, very little money at the time. And that's because there was no paid for parking. Like parking was free at the Strip. You could drive down to the Strip, and if you weren't performing there, you could watch someone else perform for free, just maybe at the mall at Caesar's Palace or in a casino. They had all kinds of free entertainment all the time that was just kind of around the attractions and around the gambling especially. Drinks were cheap, and drinks were often comped even if you were gambling with a really low amount of money. We could go into the Luxor in the middle of the night and like put a couple of dollars down at the sports book and get some free drinks that it didn't matter whether we win or lost because we were gambling like less money than the cost of the drinks. So everything was cheap. There were cheap flights in from Fresno. It was like $70 to fly in from Fresno. And the whole point of all of that cheap stuff, all of the complimentary meals, the complimentary concert tickets, it's to grease the wheels of the gambling. It's to get people encouraged to get to Las Vegas and to lose their money in the casinos. That's what all of that was about. So it was very cheap for me to live in Las Vegas because the people from outside of town who came in and gambled a lot were really subsidizing a lot of the things that I got to enjoy really for free or for very, very little cost. It was subsidized in a big part by gambling. So what happened between that time and the 2020s, where now I hear there's resort fees? Every hotel is going to have like a $50 resort fee, maybe more. There's fees to use the pool. There's fees to park. There's a $20 bottles of water on the Strip. Everything got more expensive. What the hell happened? I think there are some really good solutions. Low rent people is one of the reasons for that, but not the only one that I'll get into. But if you compare it, the early 2010s, everything was focused on the gambling. It was all about gaming. So people would lose all their money gambling, and you wanted them to feel like they still got something out of their trip, that they could continue gambling because they got their free buffet or whatever, that they were rewarded somehow for gambling. You wanted them to feel good about the gaming experience, even though they're really losing a lot of money. And I've gone into detail how people end up losing money in casinos. Even when you see the odds are a certain percent or something like that, the odds are really like 100%. 100% of the money gets kept by the casino because people go bust. So what happened is things ended up changing a little bit, right? I think before I talk about the low rent people, one thing to understand is that I think over time, and I could see this even while I was there, people were not just coming to Las Vegas to gamble. They were coming to Las Vegas for the attractions. There was like Elton John and Celine Dion were at one of the casinos, and there were shows there all the time. There was a Cirque du Soleil show. There's Penn and Teller. There's all these entertainment things to come in and see there. There's exhibits. There's rides. There's roller coasters. There's all kinds of things to do in Las Vegas besides gambling. And so as it became more, in some cases, as a family destination, those things have to cost money because the people are not coming in to lose their money in the casino. They're coming in to do the other things. So the business needs to focus more on charging for those things more directly in order to make a profit. I don't believe any kind of narrative that like, oh, the corporations are super greedy now. Like they somehow weren't greedy in 2010. Like when you think of casinos, do you think of not greedy people? No, they're trying to make as much money as possible, but those cheap things were to grease the wheels to get people to lose their money in the casino. If less people are willing to come in and spend their money in the casino, you have to spend on other things. when people talk about Las Vegas kind of being dead, there seems to be this shift that happened around 2020. So in 2019 was one of these high water marks. I think it had the most people ever visit Las Vegas in like 2019. And then in 2020, you had the pandemic, and that changed a lot of things. But you had something interesting happen in 2020 to 2021, which is people got stimulus checks. So people got these $2,000 or $2,500 stimulus checks, and they spent the money in a lot of cases in Las Vegas, in the casinos, and doing those sorts of things. There was an entire boom of the guitar making industry around that time because people got stimulus checks. And what did musicians do? How often did they have $2,000 cash sitting around? Not very often. They went and bought guitars with them. They went and bought gear. Now you can buy all the gear used for like a song and a dance, which is great if you were wanting to save money on gear and you didn't need to acquire gear back then, I guess. But that's a thing, right? Low rent people, when they get their hands on a sum of money, even though $2,000 is not that much money, when they get their hands on that sum of money, they spend it. They find something that will take that money away from them, right? They blow the money on purchases, and in some cases, big purchases. So you have a class of people that get their stimulus checks, and rather than looking at that money like we should save it, we should pay our rent with it, we should do all of these other things that you might think of doing with it, they're like, well, they get their family, we have $6,000, we should go to Las Vegas. And that's what they did. And so when you have a bunch of low rent people in one area, you have problems. Like there were these brawls in the Wynn. I think the Wynn ended up suing people for like damaging their brand by having big knockout brawls in their lobbies. Why were these people in Las Vegas? They were there. They wouldn't normally be there because they normally wouldn't be able to save enough money to make a trip to Las Vegas, but they got a stimulus check. You combine that with laws in both Nevada and California. California is the main one I remember that it became much harder to evict people after the pandemic, where it was a much longer process. It took, in some cases, like a year to evict people. So certain kinds of people are going to look at that as rent is optional. So the rent is optional, plus I have $2,000. I'm going to go to Las Vegas. I'm going to buy some crap. I'm going to buy sneakers and go to Las Vegas, whatever it's going to be. So low rent people don't think the way that maybe other people do. When we got a stimulus check, or I guess we got two, like one for me, one for my wife, maybe. It's like we paid our taxes with it. That money really helped us to pay our taxes. And you're thinking of your needs, and when you think about, I would support like a stimulus check, you're thinking about the responsible things you would probably do with the money, like fix something in your house or save it or buy school supplies. And you think other people think that way. And this is a really classic example of emotional projection. Most of us do it to some capacity rather than empathy, which is actually understanding what that person thinks and feels. We emotionally project. If I was poor, I would do this with the money. The thing is, poor people don't think that way. The people who got the stimulus check didn't think about doing that, or they didn't think very long about it. What they were like is, I never have $2,000. Let's do something fun. And so they went to Las Vegas and didn't pay their rent and trashed the city. So the response, of course, for the businesses is we need to put more filters in place that are going to reduce the kind of people that are coming in so that we don't suffer this brand harm by people having knockout brawls. By the way, this also happened on cruise ships. Okay, there's a whole, I think Carnival Cruise Lines has had major brand loss because there's bar fights on the cruise ships, and people are filming these knockout brawls between various groups of people that maybe took their stimulus checks and decided to go on a cruise. They don't lose their ghetto behavior when they get on the cruise ship. In fact, they're in a tightly confined space, and it just sort of amplifies it. And the end result is the regular people who would have preferred to take a cruise before aren't going to take one because they don't want to be locked up at sea with a bunch of low rent people. So it just ends up changing the incentives for all the behavior. If you want to know why people get into the two income trap, they spend a lot of money to move out of the suburbs, it's to stay away from the low rent people. It's to get physically away from all of the behavior problems that go along with that kind of poverty. And the poverty and the behavior goes right alongside side of it. If you were to give $50,000 to a middle-class family, you'd find that they'd had all kinds of great uses for it. They would like pay down their mortgage, and they'd save some, and they'd fix up their house. And if you give $50,000 to somebody in the projects, that $50,000 would be gone, and they wouldn't even know where it went. It would be spent on tequila and drugs maybe, and it would be spent on, they'd buy a PlayStation and some games and some new sneakers, and they'd buy a car, and then they'd skip the payments on the car would get repossessed, and they'd be left with nothing. Because they have, it's a time preference thing. They don't have this long-term thinking. They're not thinking the way that you're thinking. And this is a really easy mistake to make, is like, these people are just like me. Well, they don't think like you. And that's one of the reasons that they are in a radically different place. It's not that they can't think differently. They can, through habituation, through discipline, through careful thought, they can change those behaviors and change those actions so that they stop being that. Many people have escaped out of poverty to be incredibly successful. But it's, I think, foolish to expect people to just do that because they could. It's better to be realistic about what they're probably going to do. This has there's an interesting tangent here, which is, why is there a Costco membership? It's to keep low-rent people out of Costco. So Costco charges a membership. It's a chain here in the United States. If you don't have them where you're at, they might be in Canada as well. You might have Sam's Club in your locality, which is owned by Walmart. Same idea. There's a membership fee, a yearly membership fee, gets you a little membership card. And believe it or not, that membership card is a form of identification. I've heard of people who have lost their wallets in the airport or gotten them stolen or something, and have been able to get on the plane with their Costco card because it has their picture, and they were able to call the corporation and like get some confirmation on their identity. Like they had the Costco card and a credit card, and they were able to get on the plane. Seems crazy, but I've heard of that happening. But Costco charges this membership. It's like $100 and some odd dollars a year, maybe $200 a year. And you have to pay that up front. Then you get to go into Costco and shop. So why do they do that? Some people have made the argument, and they've made the analysis, like if Costco just let everybody come in, they would make more money because they would sell more stuff, and they probably wouldn't even have to raise the prices very much in order to offset the cost of the membership. But the fact is, the membership is a filter, and it filters out certain kinds of people so that Costco doesn't have to spend as much on security as other companies do. So they get a labor savings by not having to spend as much on security. They don't have zero security. They still have expensive things locked up in that locker most of the time. They have people checking your receipts when you go out, but that's a relatively low labor cost compared to what you may have to deal with at something like even like a Target or a Walmart, somebody like patrolling and multiple security guards. And then all of the loss of merchandise, because if you let just anybody come into your store, the low rent people are going to come in and they're going to steal. So it keeps the people who are likely to steal, most of them, it keeps them out of the door. Not everyone, but it keeps most of them out. So it's a really good filter. Whereas Walmart lets anybody in and they get a lot of stuff stolen off the shelves. There's a crap ton of shoplifting that happens at Walmart. The people who come in and steal from Walmart don't really have a problem stealing from Walmart. Walmart's a giant faceless corporation. They don't really care. They'll steal from it. And Walmart has to, and any large store, any store really, has to have as part of their financial plans and their budgeting, loss and loss prevention. Is that loss is going to happen, meaning people are going to steal things, and loss prevention, you have to spend some money to stop them from stealing things. Well, the membership is a filter that keeps out the people that are most likely to steal so that you can reduce those costs in other ways. So it ends up being a really good strategy because of that filter, because it filters certain people out of your customer base. And I think Las Vegas has adopted that to a certain extent. We have a resort fee so that it makes it a little more expensive to get here so that you don't have certain people that show up. And I have to admit, I think the pay for parking is to keep locals off the strip. And I have to say that the reason that you want to keep locals off the strip is that the population of Las Vegas has changed a little bit over the last 20 to 30 years, and it's changed in such a way that you no longer have the hardworking locals who are working at the casinos and working corporate jobs in Las Vegas. You have a lot of low rent people. And so if low rent people can come to the strip for free, then they're going to come down there and possibly make trouble for you. So just putting a $5 or $10 parking fee for the parking garage is going to massively filter a lot of those people, because they may not have $10 to do it, or they can't come up with $10, or they don't have a credit card. Same reason the people who would steal can't get together $200 to get a Costco membership. They just can't get that stuff together. It's like the people who can't get an ID to vote. It's like their life is not together enough to get a free ID from the government so that they can do things in the modern world. My mom also called these people, they called them living on the margins or marginal people. I don't like marginal people as a term. I like low rent better, simply because the academia uses marginal or marginalized people as a totally different kind of thing. Sort of different. Like they're always worried about the marginalized people. Whereas low rent people, it's like, these are people who you can expect to act badly, to blow their money quickly. They're just irresponsible people, which is why they end up stuck in those bad situations. Those things kind of go hand in hand. They might have been born in that. They might have learned those behaviors from being born in that situation. It doesn't matter where it arises. What matters is what they do and what they tend to do as a group, okay, what they tend to do. So that is really what I wanted to talk about here with the death of Las Vegas. So I think that's a lot of the stuff that you see, is that there's less gambling, so you have to charge money for other things. And then also you want to put that filter up to keep out certain people, including locals. The locals were maybe nicer 20 or 30 years ago, and they're not as nice today. So it's just something that I think is worth thinking about with low rent people and the low rent fatigue. Anyway, guys, have a great one. Leave me your thoughts down below. I'd love to read them, and be sure to stop on my Substack and my Patreon. I have some exclusive content and some books on Patreon as part of the membership. And the last thing I want to mention is there is a GoFundMe for I do play guitar. Here's a Ken Parker guitar right here. There's a GoFundMe for Ken Parker. He's very ill with cancer. I just wanted to link that. So in your charity, if you care about who's probably the most innovative guitar maker besides like Leo Fender, right? It's Ken Parker. He's done a lot of amazing stuff in his career, but he's very ill right now. And because he's an independent maker, his income really depended on his ability to make guitars, and because of his cancer treatment, he's not really able to do that anymore. So anyway, check that out and just consider that, and I will check you all next time. Have a great one.